Welcome to the No Mom is an Island podcast. As moms, we often long for moments of being alone, but the truth is sometimes we feel downright lonely. The intention of this podcast is to show you that you aren't alone, that we all experience similar things along this mothering journey. If you enjoy this podcast, please check out the episode description associated with this podcast in order to hear of easy ways that you can help this podcast continue. Well, multitasking masters, whatever you are doing while you listen to this podcast, we hope you enjoy hearing the story of another mom. Today we welcome Jami. Hi, Jami. How are you today?
Very good, Andrea. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Well, thank you for letting me interview you. I appreciate it. I'm eager to hear your story about your family and your mothering experience, and eager for people listening to also glean from the things that you have come across in your life as well. So why don't you tell us about your family?
Okay, well, we have an all-boy family other than myself and my dog. I am married to Jeff, and actually tomorrow is our 15th anniversary.
Aw, happy anniversary.
And, yeah, thank you. And when I give you the ages of my kids, you'll see there's a backstory to that as well. But our oldest boy is 18. So for 3 years, I was a single mom.
Okay.
And it was just really neat. I won't go into too much detail, but that was what the Lord used to draw me to himself. And I actually met my husband 2 weeks before I had my oldest son. So It was just a really neat story. And, and obviously we're since married and he adopted him, and it's just been a wonderful experience. So that's Sam. Our oldest is 18.
Okay.
He just graduated from high school. And he enlisted in the Air National Guard, so he is probably going to be leaving for basic training sometime after January.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal, but it's neat.
Yeah.
He right now works 2 jobs. He works during the day for an auction barn, and then in the evening he waits tables.
Okay.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then our next son, Michael, came 5 years after Sammy. Actually, the next 3 are all 2 years apart to the month. They're all August babies. So
Okay.
I said, if I would have thought that through, I would have done that differently. Yeah, Michael just turned 13, and he loves to act, and he's a fantastic artist. We'll go to the beach, and we're all, in the water and looking for shells, and he has his pad and paper and his drawing. So he loves it.
Mm-hmm.
Our Joshua is next. He is 11, and he loves bugs and every kind of critter that there is. But he's my snuggle buddy. He loves to snuggle and cuddle. And, even though he's 11, he thinks nothing about holding mommy's hand in front of everybody. So I love it.
Yeah.
His brother, Timmy, the youngest, is 9, and he wouldn't be caught dead holding my hand. But in the house, he's always coming up and asking me for a hug.
Right.
So he just turned 9.
Okay.
And he's full of energy. And, being the youngest of 4 brothers, he's also a little bit of a scrapper. But, I guess that kind of goes with the territory.
Yes.
And then we also, this past summer, we hosted an orphan from Ukraine. Yeah, it was such a neat experience. I wanted to do it for years, and we were just kind of afraid and didn't step out in faith, and we saw other families close to us that had done that, and many of them had actually since adopted. And so we did it, and it was he fit right into our family.
Oh.
He actually turned 15 while he was here.
Okay.
And we're hoping to have him back again this winter. So,
wow, that's
looking
neat.
forward to. He messages us through like a Russian Facebook, and it's not Facebook, it's like that.
Right.
But we keep in touch, so it's really neat.
Yeah, that is really neat.
Yeah, we consider him family.
Of course. Yeah, that's really neat. And what a neat experience for your boys, too, who have learned to, interact with each other, all of these years, and then to kind of absorb in another brother. That's really cool.
Right. Well, we kind of said, we were a ministry family, but, my husband's gone on several missions trips, but this is kind of like us bringing a missions trip to our home.
Yeah.
So it really was a neat experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what a neat experience for him, too, to be, I guess if he may be used to an institution kind of life where there's always people around, but to experience like the heart of a family, that's really neat. I'm sure that made a lasting impact in his life just to have experienced that. Especially, you said he turned 15, so like they often don't find forever homes when they get to that age. And so for him to have experienced that, that's life-changing. That's really neat.
Right. And it was really neat to see, and it wasn't all roses. I mean, there were some tough, he's been there since he was 4, and there were some tough things where he's grown up, not having a mom and dad figure, all the time.
Right.
Not that he can really remember. He remembers his mom, but so it was neat to see how when my husband would interact with him and correct, how he would respond. And he just was craving it.
Yeah.
So it really just the hope, and and that is really our ultimate hope. The purpose of this, it's a Christian organization, and the purpose is, to introduce them to the love of the family, but hopefully our Savior, to show them God's love. So
that's our
ultimate goal. And, in the communication we've been having, I talk about the Lord all the time, and I share scripture, and we had given him a Bible, and he told me yesterday, he said, I will definitely read my Bible. So we'll see. You never know.
When did he leave your house? You said he was there for the summer. When did he leave?
He actually left. He left August 4th. He came the end of June, and he left August 4th.
Okay.
But we're hoping he'll be here and that was a 6-week stay, and then the program is a 4-week stay in the winter. So we're hoping, and who knows what the Lord has for the future. We're just praying, and, it's hard not to worry and think things through too much, but we're really just waiting on the Lord to see what he would have.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I feel like we've kind of gotten a flavor for what your philosophy in parenting is, but when you were thinking about that, what would you say your philosophy in mothering or parenting is?
I think, and I don't even remember where I heard it, but I remember hearing something, and I wrote it on my little whiteboard on the refrigerator, to keep their hearts. And we homeschool, so it can be kind of crazy, and, there can be tension because you're with each other, 24/7. But at the end of the day, what matters shouldn't be have we accomplished everything on our, assignment pad, but have we had meaningful conversations? Have we enjoyed our time together? And those are the things that are going to make a difference for eternity. And I struggle with that, as the older I get, and I realize I have a little type A in me. And so it is a struggle. Yeah. But, I need to learn to let go of some of my desires and my expectations. And really take hold of those moments that the Lord allows. And they're usually the tough times. Right. That the Lord is giving me an opportunity to plant seeds, and that's where heart change is going to happen. It's not in the completion of your math assignment. It's when there is tension, how am I handling it? Right. And that's, I want them to see Christ in me. Right. Because that's what's going to make Christ appealing to them. And I struggle. I mean, there's many nights I go to bed and put my head in the pillow and, oh, Lord, please forgive me. Help me for tomorrow. Right. Because I mess up. But, we're doing it together. We're struggling through it together.
Right. I think one of the tricky things in parenting is the balance between that practical side of, like, if you're homeschooling, the math packet that needs to be done, or if you're not homeschooling, there's still the room that needed to be cleaned, or still the homework that needed to be done, or whatever it is that the practical, visible, physical task that needs to be done, and then that relational and spiritual aspect of it.
Absolutely.
I think that's such a challenge, because there are principles that overlap in both, but then there's some that feel like they only fit in one of the contexts. And that you need to be addressing the whole person. And sometimes I want to be like, okay, I know I need to approach this child with this thing in this way, but the room is still a disaster, and I struggle with that, the overlapping sometimes of those principles. And
even as we speak, I really have worked very hard at letting go, especially the whole of the clean house. It's just, I live with all the boys, and they do not care like I care. But right now, as we speak, that there was some issues today. We just started school yesterday. So getting back into routine, and there were some issues, and, I could, scream and yell at them to get it done and, whatever, but that's not going to help. So, right now, one of their disciplines was go in your room, and you're not supposed to until it's clean. So I'm accomplishing cleaning the room, but there's still a consequence to you didn't do what was supposed to be done. Right. So it is, doing it with grace and not embittering them. Like, it is hard. It's definitely, you need the balance.
And it's a challenge. And I would also say that I feel like that's a challenge that in some ways has gotten harder as they've gotten older, because I felt like when they were younger, I had more control. Yeah. And not in a controlling type of way, but like there was less gray area and less of them making all of their own decisions when they were younger. When they were younger, it's like, no, this is what you've been told to do. this is what you must do. And there was less of
Absolutely.
them, like making their own decisions and owning their own things. And sometimes I'm like, wow, that was easier when I could just punish you.
Yeah,
And I know that may
exactly.
sound
Tell you what to
terrible,
do and
but
do it.
I know.
Yeah, we with the homeschool, we homeschool classically, and I've learned so much about that, and it just fits with parenting in general. Like,
yes.
When they are young, it's just they memorize,
right.
They're like little sponges. But
yes.
then as they get into the, like you're saying, they get a little older, they start reasoning and asking questions.
Yes.
And so they're questioning our parenting. And it is.
Yes.
It gets challenging. But again, those are opportunities. We're creating, for me, it's hopefully young men that will be able to lead and discern. And I have to let that happen. But it's hard because, how much do I let you, make these decisions?
Right.
And challenging.
Or even how much do you allow the reasoning and the arguing? You know what I mean? Because in some way that's a developmental thing that is natural. Just, I taught in a classical setting for a short period of time a bunch of years ago. So I know the concept. Yeah. And it's based on the way our brains function and develop over time, for those of you who aren't familiar. And so, but you get to the point where, yes, there is the natural development of, say, the ability to reason and argue. But I have one particular child who likes to do that a whole lot. It's like, okay, so where does the natural development of that end and the willful sin nature pick up? And sometimes I'm like, I think we crossed the line.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, more opportunities for us to just point them to truth. And, without sharing too much of his story, my oldest, that we really struggled a lot with that. And, I just keep telling myself, God he made him into quite a leader.
Yeah.
But he's not going to lead me just yet. So, it's about trying to find, the wisdom and just constantly crying out to God to give us the wisdom. I mean, it was a tug of war for a while. And then I had to realize this isn't my fight. And sometimes the most godly thing I can do is close my mouth and let him go on and see, hopefully, eventually see. Because sometimes I think, especially at that point, they want the fight.
Right.
Like, it's kind of fun and exciting. And if you bow out, that's not so fun.
Right.
And then eventually they come around, but it's hard.
It is.
Because as a parent, you see the wrong thinking oftentimes. And I know there's times that I've been wrong too. But when you see that wrong thinking, you just want to fix it. You want to fix it right now.
Right.
But that's not how the Lord works. One of my fellow pastors' wives always says, they have to grow their own old head. And it really is so true.
Yeah.
No.
And I'm noticing that can be painful for the child as they grow, because there's always the growing pains and the bumps and bruises along the way. But it's a little painful for the parent too. Like as you watch your child walking in a direction that could result in heartache that's not necessary, and you I know I want to fix it or stop them from doing it, and realizing that that's not always the way it goes, and I can't necessarily prevent all of it. A guest a few weeks ago said that we have to remember that we don't write their story, that God does.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, that's a really good way to put it. And, when you think about the way that God writes our stories and how sometimes he uses those bumps and bruises to teach the depth of his love in somebody's life and really convince somebody's heart of that. And it's like, and, when you see the big picture, it's like, yes, that's so the way God teaches and, lessons that he teaches us. But I think as the parent, sometimes you're like, but it hurts. It's like, but you could avoid that hurt.
Yeah, and we don't like to see them hurt. And, because I know the hurts I experienced, and you don't want them to, but you do. It is their story, and you can't tell them, especially as they get older, trust me, it's like this. They have to experience some of that on their own, and it's painful to watch, but that's where, the Lord has just been so faithful in showing us time and time again, and how amazingly powerful prayer is, because there were times we were going through some just difficult times, and we would just pray. My husband and I would just pray and pray and pray. And you think, I can't even imagine how you'll answer this, Lord, but, and he in amazing ways would. And it wasn't necessarily, because my son was making wise choices or his heart was necessarily changing, but the Lord was protecting him. And that just reminds me that God truly is in control.
Right.
And I still, we still continue to pray, and he has made much better decisions, but he was very hurt. And there were some, things in his life that I know wishes weren't different. And he learned it. And like most of us, unfortunately, he learned the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But at the same time, through it all, the Lord protected him.
Yeah.
So it was, and just like my own life.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So what has been your favorite thing to teach your children or watch them learn?
Well, my absolute favorite is the same for all of them. I loved teaching my children to read. And every single, it was just like I said, home, and you obviously, having homeschooled, it has its challenges.
Yes.
And but the reading was always just such a sweet time. We usually would do a majority of it in the afternoon, and we would do our letters and sounds in the morning and stuff. But then the sitting down after lunchtime with the book, just snuggled up next to each other was just precious. So I have a horrible memory, but I remember those moments very vividly. So I'm very thankful.
Yeah.
The favorite thing to watch them with, they're all very different, but to watch them thrive in the areas that God's gifted them, or the areas where he's given them a passion. Like, my oldest, he loves athletics, and, he did cross country and track, and we think he's a very gifted speaker, although that one he tends to shy away from. But we loved watching him when he would improve, his times with his meets and his heights and his pole vaulting, and now to see him, pushing himself in the Air National Guard. Like, he's actually, I don't know how it all works, but going for some like special ops, special forces unit or something. It's the PAC-P. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, the less I know, the better. But it's tough. And so it's neat to see him push, because that, God has given him a passion for that. And you can just tell he will push himself in those areas. And we've always tried to teach them, whatever you do as unto the Lord and not to men. And when you do something, you do it with excellence. So for Sam, it's that. For Michael, God has totally gifted him with his acting abilities. He's super dramatic, and just how he's able to use that in our church. He's in all the drama productions, and this past year he was in the ensemble for the Lion King Jr., which a local Christian radio station put on, and just to see that is what breathes life into him. And I know that that's of the Lord, because he's so good at it. And then Joshua, he is the one that loves all God's creatures, all the critters. We can't go for a walk without him overturning every rock and stone. But he's so sensitive. He has a very sensitive side. And right now it's mostly with critters. But I'm kind of hoping that will develop towards the sensitivity, towards people.
Right.
So it's just neat to see his passion for that. And same, Timmy, my youngest, he loves people, loves to sing. And, he loves people, elderly and babies. Some kids, they're too busy. They don't want to be bothered with the littles. And he loves babies. Just yesterday, he was begging me to have another baby. Like, I don't know, Timmy. But so just to see them, the way God has gifted them, to see them thrive in those areas is definitely a huge blessing.
Yes. All right. On the other side, then, what has been your least favorite thing?
Least favorite to teach them, it's probably a tie between math and tying their shoes. I don't know why.
Okay.
I mean, math, I'm not a huge math fan, but in tying the shoes, I don't know. It's just a laborious.
Repetitive.
I don't know. It's like, just can't we get Velcro until you're 20? Or I don't know.
Oh, that's funny.
But then, like we talked about earlier, I think as far as my least favorite thing to watch them learn is that sinful choices have consequences. And, when they get older, especially having them learn, and even when they're younger, you don't like to see them hurt, but sometimes that that's what it's going to take for you to learn. So, yeah, that's not fun. No. But I know it's needed. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right. Can you think of a high moment in parenting, a moment where you thought to yourself, maybe I can do this, amidst some of the craziness of when they were little, and maybe a moment where you felt like you kind of had it figured out, maybe even just for a moment?
Yeah, well, it's kind of, when I first think about that, the first thing that comes to my mind is what I thought was a high moment. And it's very silly, but it's just a funny, example. When my second son, Michael, was just shy of 2 years old, I was expecting our next one, in almost a month.
Right.
And I thought, I want to, work on potty training now. I don't want 2 in diapers. And so he loved books. He would look at books all the time. And I think that's the artist in him. He just really loved the pictures and whatever. So I, that summer, collected a whole bunch of books at a yard sale, several yard sales. And within a few days, he was completely potty trained. And I thought, I was training guru. I mean, I should write a book and help all these other struggling moms. And, I just patted myself on the back. And, then for about 2 years, I felt that way until the next child was ready to be trained. And I think it was somewhere closer to 4 before he was finally fully potty trained. So we went from a couple days with one to a couple of years with another. So that was quite, my pride was knocked down a few levels. But it was just, a good reminder that with everything, we have to depend on the Lord. And it isn't anything in myself. I later realized, he's got a bladder the size of a pea. So it took him longer to have that control. So it was all good. But I think the moments, it's not necessarily any one big moment that it was really I've got this, but just time and time again when you get discouraged, but then how the Lord just continues to bring either just what you need at the right time and, to remind me you can do this. And it's usually for me, the Lord works in so many ways, but for me, it's usually through people. And, I have one friend in particular, we text every morning, she's my accountability partner. And it's funny. We always say it's interesting that we're never both in the pit at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we're able to, when I'm kind of down, she speaks truth to me and lifts me up. And so that's really what the Lord uses is other people to just remind me, you've fallen, but get back up.
Right.
And that's when I realized, I've got this, not because I've got it, but because the Lord's gotten me.
Right. Yeah.
So that's really the lessons that, I've learned in realizing I've got this, because I know I really don't.
Right.
I don't have it.
Yeah.
It's the Lord that does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting how sometimes the high moments and low moments are very connected or almost interchangeable. Absolutely. Or it's like what you thought was a high moment wound up being a low, or what you thought was a low wound up having a huge redemption story attached to it. And it's just fascinating how that works.
Right.
All right. What would you say has been a primary influence in the way that you parent?
I would say, again, people, but specifically my dad. Growing up, we weren't a Christian family. I look back now and I see the Lord's hand amazingly. I made a profession of faith as a little girl, but we didn't, there was no consistency. We were not, consistently being forward. So we had a lot of anger. There was a lot of fighting. My parents were married very young. And I always thought that my dad was the one that was wrong and that it was always his fault. And he would apologize all the time after, there was an episode or whatever. And I remember getting to a point where I was just sick of it and I didn't want to hear it and I didn't like him. And I had a very hard heart towards him. And, it's neat because when the Lord, looking back and seeing the thread of him working throughout all of our lives, my parents are the ones that they started going back to church when I was pregnant, with my oldest, and they invited me. And, through hearing the word, my dad and I ended up getting baptized together. And, he is truly a new creation in Christ.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And then I realize now that all of the time, as much as I hated hearing him say sorry, I don't want to hear you say it. I just don't want you to act this way anymore. But he taught me humility. And without humility, we can't even know the Lord. So, that influenced me tremendously. And as a parent, and I did not realize I had anger issues until I became a parent.
Right.
And I cling to that all the time, that humility. And, I'm thankful that my dad modeled that for me. And because it's so important to model that to our children, because, we don't want to teach them that, you need to be perfect and behavior is most important. We need to teach them that you can't ever be perfect.
Right.
But you can humble yourself and ask forgiveness and God will forgive you. And that's exactly how you come to know the Lord. Yeah. So I would definitely say my dad.
That's beautiful. And again, a kind of a callback to what we were talking about before and how, so often we want to prevent something that's unpleasant or painful and yet look at what your answer was.
Yeah.
If it had been different, right, God used that. And I know time and time again, I've heard stories about how, I even look in my own life too, how God used something that we would consider something that, we almost wish could be prevented. And yet, God uses it for our good and for his glory over and over. And I remind myself of that phrase more and more all the time, just reminding, to try to view everything from the mindset of God works all things for my good and for his glory. Yeah. And sometimes we don't see all of that right away. Sometimes it's a broader perspective and we don't always get it in the moment. But if you remind yourself that that's the case, I think it helps us to deal with those moments, even if we can't see the bigger picture.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. How do you, mother of lots of boys and homeschooling, how do you do self-care? How do you make time for yourself?
Well, every day I wake up between 5:30 and 6. There's an occasional exception, and that is my time. Okay. I read my Bible, I drink my coffee, I pray. That's when I text my accountability partner. And then I also, at least 3 days a week, I'll try and get some sort of exercise. When it's warmer, I go for a walk. And that's usually either by myself or with my husband. That's some of our best connecting times is, walk before the boys are even up. Or in the winter, we'll do a video. But if I've been doing that for years, and it's truly a time for me that I look forward to. And if I don't have that time, the day usually does not go quite as well. So I've learned, like for me personally, I that really helps me. I can be reset, because if I wake up, with the kids, for example, it's already like, I'm behind.
Right.
And
full speed ahead.
I really, yeah. And then, of course, there's those tough days, homeschooling days, where even if I've had a wonderful time in the morning, the day still gets tough. I'll take an afternoon break, and I might make myself a cup of decaf or a cup of tea, or the kids a cup of hot chocolate, and we might watch a Christian comedian or something together. Or I might say, okay, quiet reading time, go to your rooms, and I'm going to have my quiet reading time, even just for a few minutes. Sometimes I think we feel guilty taking that time for ourselves, and my husband actually has told me too. He says sometimes the godliest thing you can do is take a nap. And, I'm not a huge napper, but even just having that rest time. Right. I think we feel guilty because we should be accomplishing and doing, and, but what good are we if we're fried and not being fed and nourished? Exactly. And, the whole Mary and Martha, right. Sometimes we just need to sit at Jesus' feet and soak a little bit so that we can be there for our family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. With homeschooling and having many sons, I'm guessing you have some sort of favorite life hack, something in your life that you do that makes your life simpler or easier or cheaper or faster in some way.
Yeah, well, there's several, but they're all very simple. But I think the first thing that comes to mind is just the whole, meal prep and shopping and that kind of stuff. And this summer was a little off. Things were a little crazy. We're getting back into the swing of things now that we're having more structure. But I try every, Saturday the paper comes, and I try and sit down and make my grocery list according to what's on sale. There's typically 3 stores I shop at. Aldi's for a lot of things. And Tops, if that's a local supermarket here. Whatever, sometimes buy 2, get 3 free. I'll pick up what I need from those things. And then the super Walmart. So I try and do that in one day. And then this year I've scheduled the actual, Sundays I'll go to Aldi's because it's close to our house, so I can swing by after church or something. But then Mondays, and this year I scheduled it in while my Michael is at art class.
Okay.
I'm going to take one of my other boys. So that'll be kind of our
time together
time,
right? And
do the shopping. And then my husband, that's typically his day off, he'll stay with the other boy, and then we'll switch weeks.
Okay.
So just because also we need, being a ministry family, your kids see you investing in other people's lives all the time, which is wonderful, and they are often right there with us doing that. They serve alongside of us, but we also need to make sure we're showing them your priority too. So we really try to, have mommy and son date times, daddy and son date times.
Right.
So, and if you don't schedule that in, it doesn't happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's, this year Mondays are going to be our day for that. And the one that has art on Mondays, he'll get an evening with mom and dad. So.
That sounds good.
That's probably the most helpful one. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of it, it'd be nice if hacks were magical, but the truth of it is they take intentionality too.
Absolutely.
It'd be nice if it was just some magic wand that made everything easier, but even those things take some intentionality in doing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Do you have a favorite parenting book?
I love anything by Ted or Paul Tripp. I love all their parenting books.
Right.
But especially, I think Paul Tripp wrote Age of Opportunity, which is geared a little bit more towards preteen and teenagers. And like we talked about, kind of when they're starting to think for themselves and make, it's, not so much about controlling the schedule and their life, but really, speaking into their hearts. And so I have gone back to that book. Actually, I first started reading that book when my oldest was a baby. They were doing this, studying it at our church, and I did it then, and I have revisited it multiple times. And because it really all goes back to the heart, and like that's, again, where, my philosophy is just trying to really keep their hearts. And that's, our goal in parenting is not the outward behavior, but we want them to know and love the Lord, and that's going to happen from the heart.
Yeah. Somebody else recently mentioned, I think it's Paul Tripp. Again, I'm confused.
Yes.
A newer book just called Parenting, and when I looked it up, I was like, oh, that looks so good. All about like grace, grace and parenting.
It's when is it? I can't remember. It's sometime soon in September, and like a Friday night and a Saturday. Where we bought, we're doing the simulcast thing at our church.
Yes.
For people to come and watch the video that he's doing for that book. So,
I just posted the link for that. I just posted the link for that on the podcast's Facebook page. So the No Mom is an Island Facebook page. I posted the link for that just because I was like, wow, that looks so good.
Yeah.
All right. What do you have as a word of encouragement to other moms, a piece of advice to help that weary mom out there?
I would just remind them that, the Bible tells us the righteous man falls 7 times, and each time he gets back up. And I know just from my own experience that, being a mom can feel like I'm just falling one day after another.
Yes.
But, we need to keep getting back up and remembering that we're more than conquerors through him who loved us and gave his life for us. And I just always need to remind myself that it's the Lord who's my strength and my joy. And it's him alone that's going to save my children. Yeah. So I need to stop thinking that it's all on my shoulders.
All me, right.
And I need to, I think a lot of moms sometimes too, they get upset with themselves for being weary. And it's okay to be weary. It's not okay to stay down when we fall.
Right.
And just wallow in it.
Right.
But it's okay to be wearied and tired. Yeah. Because that means that we're giving this mommy thing our all.
Yeah. Right.
So I think that's okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And I don't know that I've really thought about it in the parenting realm, but that's so applicable. It's just, and, we as moms tell our children that, like, it's okay, get back up and like try again. And yet so often in our own slightly different example of that, we struggle to do it for ourselves.
Right.
Well, Jami, thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience and your journey as a mom. I've really enjoyed listening to your perspectives and your thoughts on all of that and hearing your stories and things. So I really appreciate you allowing me to interview, particularly when you started homeschooling yesterday.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. Yeah.
Good. I was like, I can't believe she agreed to do an interview today on the second day of school. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it, and God bless your ministry, and I hope that it encourages many, many women.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Andrea. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the No Mom is an Island podcast. We hope that it was an encouragement to you wherever you are in your mothering journey. If you would like to share your story or would like to see something added to our interviews, please contact us at nomomisanisland@gmail.com or send us a message on Facebook or Instagram. If you have enjoyed listening to the stories of other moms, please check out the episode description listed below this episode in order to see easy ways that you can help this podcast continue. Also listed in the episode description are the verses and the books that Jami mentioned today as she told us about her journey as a mom. Thank you for listening.